The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic episode and guest for you today, but before we jump into the conversation, let me just take a minute to remind everyone that today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and also Light Fair. We look forward to seeing you guys there in the spring, so make sure you get there and we will see you soon.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. We have all of our episodes, newsfeed, merch store, and information on the certification training that's going to be happening in 2025, so check it out. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We could not do this without our sponsors, MaxLite, specifically C-Max, their lighting controls platform, which we're going to get into the weeds on in this episode. But if you want to check them out, MaxLite, MaxLite.com/CMAX. They're a really excellent platform for lighting controls. They are really targeting the triple LC, luminaire level lighting controls options using plug-and-play platform devices that really make things easy to install, easy to program. I highly recommend you check it out, but take a listen to the episode to learn more about it. But really, they're an excellent platform. I can't say enough good things about them. So check them out, maxlite.com/CMAX. But getting into the conversation here, we have Umesh from MaxLite, CMAX control platform. Umesh, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Umesh Baheti. I'm a senior VP at MaxLite, really responsible for product innovation for new technologies. Been with the company coming up to just about 5 years or so. And in the last 4 years, we created CMAX. This is sort of our offering from MaxLite. Initially, the vision was to, we were not known in the industry, obviously, as a controls company or had a controls offering necessarily. People always knew us as a luminaire manufacturer. So we built this during COVID, and the idea was to really simplify this, right? Not only for as a manufacturer, what we were trying to solve for with controls, but then to look at all the stakeholders involved in there, and provide some kind of value to all those different stakeholders. So that's what I do for the company, and looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and for sponsoring the episode. It's interesting because when I started in architectural lighting design, MaxLite had a very different brand awareness than it does nowadays. And so there has been kind of this evolution from its humble beginnings to where it is now, and it really seems to be setting pace with a lot of the lighting controls manufacturers out there. And so, when this kind of started, like, what was the idea behind all of this? Because you do kind of hear every now and then luminaire manufacturers saying, yeah, we dabble in lighting controls, or yeah, we OEM lighting
Right.
controls, but we're not really control people. So what was the progenesis of this?
Yeah, so controls has been around now for many, many, many years, right? And as a luminaire manufacturer, when our customers would request controls, we would then have to go and add all those components to our luminaires, right? Oftentimes that means mechanical adjustments. You have to go back to the UL, test all these fixtures. So that took a lot of time, right? And so, when you're trying to solve a customer's need and you're expecting, that luminaire with the controls added to it within, say, less than 4 weeks lead time, that becomes, would become a challenge. And then also the repeated cost of having to add somebody else's controls to our files and go back and so on and so forth. So it was an issue about managing cost, number one, and really simplifying the lead times and so on and so forth for our customers, right? So we thought about that and we said, why don't we just kind of come up with our own at that point in time. So that was really the genesis behind, we were trying to solve a problem which was our issue, right? Now we have to do all the assembly work and bring this to the customer, and the customer is waiting for something. So why don't we come up with a better solution that even could be field installable, right? And as opposed to kind of doing everything in the factory. So we started with this problem of decoupling, the sensors from the luminaires, and really thought about the whole plug and play concept and how do
Mhm.
we make that happen. And in this time, the team, I have some engineers, also the product managers, who really got together, really thought deeply about what the solution would look like. And we iterated on so many different designs, but then we felt that our unique recipe here would be having a USB-C receptacle in there. And
Mhm.
I will share with the audience that actually we have a patent on this, for lighting applications, for IoT use cases, and so on and so forth. So that has been a real, I would say the secret sauce of CMAX, quite
Mhm.
frankly, that makes it true plug and play. So that's how it all began, Webster. And I remember, like, during COVID, everything was locked down. I had just moved from Seattle. I was with Amazon before coming to MaxLite, and I was coming into New Jersey, and New Jersey had just opened up. And so myself, our engineers, and our product managers, we will all wear masks and just shoulder to shoulder working, figuring out like how this is all going to work together. Um, so we launched the system in 2021, with some simple offerings at that point in time, because once again, like, nobody really knew like we were from a control standpoint. So
Right.
we started with the basic controls, and then we added more things, as we went along.
Well, and I think that that's kind of the right move. I mean, it's easy enough for some groups to start just kind of grabbing everything and saying, okay, we're providing all lighting controls under the sun. But that does kind of become quite a challenge to maintain and manage. So starting simplistic makes sense. And also, I just want to emphasize this, which is really kind of unique, is using a USB-C connector
Yeah.
for the purpose of plug and play functionality. I mean, we see so many different connectors, so many different ways of tapping into a luminaire that really kind of makes it quite tricky. And a lot of pushback that we hear is that the contractors don't understand how to use it. And
Hmm.
USB-C is so commonplace nowadays that I mean, I hope contractors know how to use USB-C
Oh,
plugs.
we
But go ahead.
yeah, we get calls at times like, hey, can I charge my phone with that? so so we do get those kinds of things, but of course, we have to educate the audience, saying like, no, it's not a 20-watt charger you would use to
Right.
power up your cell phone, right? These are low voltage devices. And yeah, I think, the other part, just to add a little bit more color, as we were thinking about the idea generation for CMAX, and what problem are we solving for, right? So we looked at all the different stakeholders. So if you're an electrician, what is your pain point? How do we make it simple for you, right? So the plug and play aspect is obviously very important, because it's the labor cost, right, that's involved
Yep.
in adding controls. And you guys come from the theatrical world, and that's fairly complex. You have all these different things, you have to connect all that. So you can imagine, right, the labor you need to actually go do all that work.
Right.
So we try to attempt to remove a lot of those, right? And with the luminaire level lighting control, that's exactly what's happening today. You don't need to do any kind of wiring, right? So
Mhm.
when you make a choice for a particular luminaire family from ours, from MaxLight, and then you pick the right sensor you're looking for, all you have to do is just go put that sensor, put in a set
Mhm.
screw, and you're all set,
Yep.
right? So it takes less than 30 seconds for you to actually go and install that sensor, right? And as a manufacturer, we literally solve our problem. Like, hey, now I can ship the luminaire, I can ship the sensor along with it if somebody wanted it. But we get requests like, I don't need the sensors right now, I'm going to do the
Mhm.
install like
Right.
2 3 weeks later. Can I have that, when that happens? So now we can decouple this because of the plug
Mhm.
and play. So
Yep.
we're, solving the needs for the project manager on site, who is not looking to have all these things all go together at the same time. So we address that. The electricians are happy because they're in and out of the job quickly.
Mhm.
Mm.
And again, the tools that we provide from a commissioning standpoint, and this is just based on the different tiers of control solutions we offer today. You can pick and choose what you're looking for. You're an advanced user, and I want to really do building management, integration, and all that. Of course, we have solutions for you there. But if you are a contractor, I'm looking for something quick and easy, and I don't need like too much nonsense of like which app to use and how to use it. Hey, we have a simple solution for you as well for that. So that's how we set the vision. But obviously you don't come out like running day one. So we
Right.
wanted to crawl, and we said, okay, we'll start with basic controls. And then we definitely saw the need for network controls. And then soon after that, August or September of 2021, we launched network controls. And the real thing for MaxLite, personally for me, was to like prove it to the outside world that we can do it,
Mm,
right? And so initially, yes, there were lots of quirks, like we had to fix this, fix that, and whatever, right? So
Yep.
that those are typically expected, like on a new product launch, and something like this for the very first time that we had done, as a company. So there was a lot of pain points from learning from all that. But we did it right. I think we reached out to every single customer, and every job that we got, right, it was like, you are my only customer, right? And so
mhm,
when the install happened, we would call, ask them like, how was it, like, what did you like, what did you not like? So that process helped us to actually refine our offering, make changes to it. And as we decided to launch the future things, we incorporated all that feedback,
mm,
from those customers.
Yep.
So that's how the journey began. And this year was a monumental year for us. We launched like three different propositions, and we'll get into it hopefully. But to but that journey was important, because you
mhm,
need to take some time and have bunch of different things happen, right? You have to do a schools, and you have to do a church, and you have to
Yep.
do a parking lot. Really round yourself with all the different applications, and now say, yep, this system is robust, we know what the pain points are and how to fix some of those things, right? Now you can go back and say, now I can flex my muscles even more and
yeah.
add more things to it. So that's what we've been doing.
I'd have to imagine that starting with the USB-C idea had to have already alleviated some pain points for you guys internally and for your customers and for reps, right? Because now it
Mhm.
allowed you to have fewer SKUs. You didn't need a fixture with sensor X, Y, and Z. You had
That's
a
right.
fixture,
Yeah,
and then you had the sensor. And then,
that's
but it
right.
also must make things easier for the customers because, you install everything, things change on site, right? GCs, electricians, things change. And now the customer can say, hey, we didn't have a sensor on this device before, but we'd really like to add an extra sensor here. Or we now want to try this sensor at this location, try and collect this data. And now they can go to any fixture and just away they go.
No, you're spot on, Ron. I think that is exactly what it is. I when we talk about CMAX and with our agent network, with our customers, and why choose CMAX, right? This is one of the key points. And folks don't take this into account day one, because if you are a distributor, right, your financial transaction with a company like MaxLite is, okay, what is the bill of materials, right, and so on and so forth. But what is the total cost of ownership here? When you start thinking about all the value chain, and you look at all the different stakeholders, right, what can go wrong? What flexibility are you offering them, not only today but like 5 years from now, right? So we're doing, say, a university, and that campus is actually going to evolve and change over a period of time.
Yep.
So but do you want to go and remove all these luminaires that you've added, and you're repurposing some rooms perhaps, right? So maybe you have to move a sensor from one zone before to a new zone, for the second time around. So you have to give tools to the customers to make it easy for them. Can you afford an electrician to come in every single time? All you have to do is just move that wire probably from one sensor to another sensor, right? So we try to remove all this noise
Mhm.
by going this route. And the other cool thing about the USB-C is that, even today, right, when we talk about lighting controls, we're really focusing on fairly basic things, quite frankly, right? It's dimming, it's changing colors. That's the extent to what people are doing lighting controls today, right? Of course, there are advanced controls. I'm not saying that this is where the buck stops, but um, I would say the vast majority of the projects that are getting done, that's sort of the typical use case, right? But we thought about that, and we said, okay, well, what if, right, beyond lighting, what would
Mhm.
this look like for us? And how do you then go and create a foundation today that you can stand on, right, to adopt all these future technologies, right? And I think us choosing the USB-C is the right way, because you have multiple channels in that, and you can go beyond just putting four wires in there. We can put 12, 24 wires, right? So there's a lot of other things now we can do. So, while we are not saying today we are a IoT tech company, right?
Mm.
But the thing is, like, with luminaires and they're in the ceiling and they're fixed infrastructure, you can repurpose those for many other things beyond lighting. And
Mm-hmm.
as technologies evolve, these convergence are going to happen, right? I mean, look at what AI is doing today. AI was talked about, in the scientific minds 30 plus 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But other things had to have happen, right? You
Yep.
had to figure out a way to get your compute power to a manageable thing. Cloud computing had to happen. So all these
Yep.
things take time to see
Mhm.
these mature technologies come to fruition.
Well, and so you mentioned you have three lines, and so do you mind just briefly describing those three lines that you have?
So actually, we have four,
Oh,
and they even go deeper within that. So yes, I'll help you understand that. So we have CMAX Basic, which is just our, think about that as an in-fixture control. It's
mhm,
a very, very simple, luminary level lighting control that once you program that sensor with a handheld remote, all you are doing is taking all those settings and putting into that sensor, right, through a IR communication method. Once that is done, the sensor will just behave based on the settings, but it's not going to communicate to its neighbor. So it's not a network solution, right? But that is a great, it's a low cost point, still qualifies for a lot of rebates for our customers.
mhm,
So it's a entryway into understanding controls. Um, then the second tier we call is easy RF. This is a new offering actually. It's ironic, like we started with network controls and then we are kind of coming back and saying, let's fill in the gaps, right? That's basically what happened.
right,
But this was again an insight from the customers, and we learned that network controls can be complex. There is
Mm-hmm.
definitely a learning curve, right? It doesn't matter whose system you're using. I
mhm,
mean, we are all folks who understand controls, and we can talk the right lingo, but many customers of ours, like, they don't understand that, right?
right,
So
Mm.
it's a significant step up, and help them learn some of these things. So we had to kind of think about, like, what is that intermediate step, before between basic and network. You're giving them the flavor of what network feels like, essentially from a user experience standpoint, but you're not paying top dollars for that, right? And
Right.
you're not asking for all these other things which you never use, right? So what can we how do we fill that gap? So the second tier is easy RF. We call that as a room-based, zonable wireless group control. Okay, so it is a network control in some sense, but we limit what you can do with it. So we won't
mhm,
allow you to schedule your lights. So if you said, "Hey,
mhm,
Umesh, I want to turn my lights on at 4 in the morning because I'm a warehouse and I have my first shift people coming in, and I want these lights to be dimmed at a certain state as they walk in," we cannot give you that with easy RF. That's intentional because we
mhm,
want people to understand that for that you have to think about network controls.
Yep.
So the third tier is network controls, which is our proprietary Bluetooth system. It's a full line, it's a DLC and LC a product. We have done all kinds of projects, guys. We have done projects as small as 50 nodes, and we have done projects 6,000 nodes plus.
mhm.
So it's a very nice scalable system, and it's been super successful for us for the last 3 years since we launched that. In the tail end of 2021. And then this year we announced CMAX Network Partner. So that's really the fourth tier. It is a network control solution, but when you think about the controls as a pyramid, right, and you say, okay, what's at the top of the pyramid, right? Those are the enterprise level solutions, right? So when you're doing
Mm-hmm.
multi sites and multi campuses and buildings and so on and so forth, how do you solve a problem, right?
Right,
So there are solutions, while the network control that we offer is a great solution and we can scale that up, but that also runs into some limitations, right? And sometimes there are other systems that can actually do those specific
mhm,
applications better.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was exactly that, right? Because of the USB-C platform that we have, and we said, geez, we can take the intelligence from some other software company, right, and embed that into our hardware, right? And now you have the same plug
yeah,
and play, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
are picking a luminaire from us. Maybe you're doing it, office, and you're looking for a troffer, nice troffer. So we have that. Hey, but you know what? I'm really looking for this cool things, right? So we will suggest to you, hey, pick one of our partner solutions because they're fantastic at what they do. And it also brings credibility also back to MaxLite because
Mm.
they're also going out and putting on their roadmap some advanced things that they're working on, right? And the
Right.
two partners today we have chosen is Silver and Kasambi,
Mm.
strong brands out of Europe,
Yep.
and very well talked about, especially in the control circles.
Right.
And they both have different technologies, quite frankly, but they're very, very solid, right? And we
Mm.
think this is a good fit for MaxLite because our client profiles and the end users that we are going and targeting, we find the right spots for our partners as well, right?
Right.
And it also helps us de-risk us, like how much activity can we do on our own roadmap, right? So if we are
Yeah.
also working with Silver and they're working on their roadmap, hey, let's collaborate and figure out how we can integrate this for CMAX. So this gives us that nice opportunity to kind of work with other people as well, as opposed to hiring our own software engineers and building those things out.
Right. And just to confirm, because each of these tiers has their own monumental differences in some ways. They're all still using that same USB-C connection,
Oh
which means you can
yes,
swap them out. If you're like, oh, actually, I need to upgrade to the next tier, you just need to buy
right.
the next tier of sensors and devices.
Absolutely, Webster, you're right. But beyond that, right, when we think about controls, not every project that we do will be just all MaxLight fixtures. Sometimes there is
Yeah.
fixtures that are already there at the premises and the customer doesn't want to change it, right? But they want to make that completely networkable in the future, right? As they add a few things to their project. So we have to give them tools to solve for that. So it's not about just luminaire level lighting control. Clearly we see value in luminaire level lighting control. Not only as a manufacturer, but it definitely gives you a lot of flexibility. The advanced use cases you may do in the future would require this level of flexibility, right? So having a zone and a power pack to control an entire zone um, is good if you're trying to save on cost today, right? But
Mhm.
it's not going to give you
Yep.
that flexibility,
Right.
right? So we do have power packs. We have devices that are non-USB that you can plug in, and you make it very easy to add that to your job as well. So it's a complete line. It's not just luminaire lighting control, but yes, majority of the products today are luminaire level lighting control. That truly makes it plug and play.
Hmm.
That's
Right.
awesome. Could you tell us about some of the different types of sensors and stuff that you guys have, come up with and identified that, you integrate with your fixtures for the users?
Oh yeah, sure. So of course it all begins with what is your application, right? So if it's an outdoor of an indoor, right, you're going to pick your luminaire family first. And so let's take an example for indoor. For indoor, we have we have two, few different choices. But if you think about basic control, we offer you microwave sensor. We also offer you PIR sensor. So it all depends on, again, what application you're trying to serve. And then in the network control space, for the most part, we have PIR sensors, right? But then it's all networked. So if one sensor detects you, then the rest of the members in that group or in that zone understand that, hey, we all have to come up in our light levels or dim down at the same time, and so on and so forth. So I would say we have rectangular sensors, which are mostly for our indoor products. Then we have round
Hmm.
sensors, which are for our exterior products. We do have high bays that also take round sensors. So the form factors really are dictated by the luminaire product family. And then, for the most part, then exactly what technology you want to choose. If it's just a photocell, then for outdoor, I would just pick a photocell. Do I want a motion sensor along with the photocell? Then we give you a different option with that, right?
Hmm.
On the networking side, on the network control side, we give you sensors that have Bluetooth radios built into it. We also give you just the nodes, the networking nodes, or what we call controllers, that have no sensing capabilities built into it, right?
Hmm.
So you can also save on cost by marrying a sensor along with a network node, right? You don't need sensors, everywhere all the time. But many of our customers like that flexibility because, Ron, you just said before, right? Yeah, I made a mistake. I put the sensor in the wrong
Yep.
location, and this is the egress pathway. This is where the sensor should be, not the network node, right? with our system, it's easy. If you made a mistake, you can literally swap that. It's very easy to do. But in some other system, if it's completely wired and
Right.
how it was all done,
Yeah.
you may literally have to move the luminaire to a different location. So that's a very broad offering. And then there's many accessories, wall stations and gateways. And if you had to remotely connect into your site, we give you all kinds of tools for that as well.
That's excellent. And so, just to nerd out a little bit here, because you mentioned a technology that I think a lot of people know of, but don't really know very much about, which is microwave sensing technology. Do you mind just
Hmm.
talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in the sensing world today, there are many ways you can sense presence and detection, right? So microwave is one of them. Microwave operates typically at like 5.6 gigahertz. So it is basically it's sending out a signal, right? And it kind of goes, in 360 degrees. And I'm just making it very simple. It's like a Doppler
Sure.
effect, right? So
Yeah.
basically, what happens is that you have these waves of RF being emitted out, right? And if there is an obstruction, that pattern gets disturbed, right? And then
Hmm.
hey, I got basically
Right.
there is some kind of a object there that's detecting you. Now keep in mind, right? Microwave doesn't look at heat. So unlike a PIR sensor that is looking for your body temperature and so on and so forth, right? So when you have a certain temperature and there is a different temperature of a body kind of walks in, the PIR sensor detects you, right? But if you were to have, I'm just giving a crude
Sure.
example here, right? But
Yeah.
if you had a window and there is a tree outside and that's like moving because of wind, and you have a
Mm.
microwave sensor right next to that window, it's quite possible that you're going to detect that
Right.
as motion, right? Even though there is no human presence, right? But the microwave is kind of sensitive. So you have to think about the right application for microwave. We find people
Hmm.
using microwave sensors for stairwells, and
Mm.
it's a great application space. Warehouses, we see that because you may be coming from one end, but you can't see that because there is a wall. um, a microwave sensor gives you much better detection capabilities, right? In that
Right.
case,
Mm.
a PIR sensor actually looks for a line of sight. So if the PIR sensor doesn't see you and you don't see the PIR sensor, if you will, right, then it's not going to detect you, right? So those are some nuances of understanding that. But I wouldn't put a microwave sensor in an office and you have a corridor right next to it, right? Somebody walking there, it's going to detect you, and or the
Right.
sensor is going
Right.
to detect that person, and your lights are going to turn on in the office.
Yeah.
So it's just helping the folks understand when to use what. And we do have those situations where people pick the wrong solution and then they're like, wait a minute, this is not detecting me. Well, yeah, that's why.
Right. Well, and I think that that's really critical because I mean we do have passive infrared kind of seems to be the standard for
Yep.
interior motion sensing technology. We do see dual tech where you support the PIR with either acoustic or ultrasonic, which functions similarly to microwave in some way. But
Oh, yes.
microwave really is kind of a unique element in how it actually sees through objects as opposed to just around objects. And
That's right.
so, I think just people being aware of its presence and that it is an option out there is still critical because, sometimes you do need to have that through object sensing capability for some reason. Or
Right.
again, just you need that level of sensitivity for your space because of the fact that, line of sight is not going to be as reliable. Like for instance,
Yep.
in a stairwell, if I imagine that with microwaves, you don't need to have a sensor at every single entrance. You can stretch the capacity a little bit more.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. No, you brought a good point, Webster. You do have with microwave, you can penetrate through your walls and so on and so forth. So yes, of course, there is still restrictions. You can kind of go through concrete and uh,
Right.
that type of an obstruction. But yes, a public storage building where you have multiple units right next to each other, right? If you put a microwave sensor in one, right, what's the impact of that in the next unit or the unit
Right.
thereafter? So you're absolutely right. Those are the areas where you have to understand the right application for microwave versus PIR.
And so I imagine that, if, for instance, I were a designer and I were sold on CMAX as a platform, and I wanted to take the next steps to using CMAX in my project,
Mm.
you would you and your team would be a good resource to helping me identify what the right products are for the project I'm trying to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, it's a continuous education, right? We don't know how we are connecting sometimes with our customers. This would be a good example, right? The listeners on this for this podcast, would be curious to understanding now. Hopefully, hey, how does this actually work? I want to understand. I want to
Hmm.
see a video perhaps and see, is this real? Is this that simple to kind of go install? So, of course, there is that. Um, we have pretty good documentation for the most part, but it's always like, how much, how can you make it user friendly for a customer? What is the customer journey? Where do you come into MaxLite? Do you come to our website,
Mm,
maxlite.com/cmax, and you navigate through that, or do you come onto our product page and say, actually, I'm looking for a 135-watt high bay, and now let me find out what sensors I can use with it, right?
Hmm.
So we have to think about, like, helping the users understand the right solutions that they're looking for and how to find that, right? So that is a work in progress, to be honest. And now with the new offerings we just announced, with Silver and with Kasambi, I mean, that
mm.
portfolio is also kind of going big. So
Hmm.
that's also our challenge a little bit, like, how do we best educate the audience? um, should it be on our cut sheets? And are we doing justice to just giving information for just luminaire level lighting control? But then they may say, well, wait a minute, I didn't think this was what I wanted. I was looking for a power pack and something else. But if I don't make that connection for them, then you lose a customer. Like, this is not
Right.
for me. So yeah, that's the hard part. Like, figuring all this stuff out, and how do you package information, for your customers.
So let's talk about programming for some of your stuff.
Yeah,
If you could, let's go through, the various lines. You had already mentioned, with the basic that you're using just, sort of right your IR to program to it.
yeah.
But let's talk about how that programs and then who's doing that. Is this something that you're working to train end users, electricians? Do you have startup technicians? What is sort of the various paths based on the product lines?
Great question. So I would say today, I would say it's mix of all of that, actually, in many ways. But when we first started, right, obviously we were a pretty small team. We can't just scale and do all of these things you're describing. So what we took as a first step was, obviously, our agents, our go to market is primarily through our agent network. So our first step was always to get our agent network completely trained, because those are the local guys in their markets, with those relationships, with the distributors and potentially with customers, like, electricians and contractors. So step number one was that. Of course, internally we trained everybody within MaxLight. So all our regional sales managers, all the folks who are even inside salespeople kind of know, like, okay, when somebody calls you for controls, okay, this is all you need to, ask them for questions and, offer them these solutions. So we did that groundwork. But when you start getting into network controls, it is obviously a lot more involved. So then there is the idea of, like, how are you going to design this space. So we do layouts as well. So when we get these projects, we will work with our customers and understand, what are you trying to achieve, what are you trying to do. Sometimes it is a spec that we have to cross over, and they may say, like, hey,
Mm,
this is somebody else's spec, but we like your luminaires because we did this space already with your products, and what
mm,
can we do to kind of change that. But here is the caveat: I can't change the fixtures, or I can do this, or I can do that, right? So what solutions do you have? So that does require a conversation with us, because there are maybe three different ways we can solve your needs, right? But you have to kind of engage with us at that point in time. So we oftentimes get called in, the controls team will get called in, and we'll talk to that. Today we also are working with some controls tech, not in a big scale, because we are really empowering our agent network to go serve the needs for the customer, right?
Hmm.
And this is also revenue making opportunity for our agents, because
mhm,
you could charge legitimately some dollars for this work, right? A startup is not free. There is a lot of things that have to be done correctly. So how do you enable that for the customer? So if our agent is comfortable doing that, we let our agents actually handle a lot of that work. But if the agent gets super busy, they don't have the time, but we don't want to obviously disappoint the customer. So it's all about good customer experience. So with that in mind, right, we do reach out to other people, and hey,
mhm,
maybe down the road, one of you guys, like, if you guys have time, can you help us with that? Or can
Mhm.
all these kinds of things are absolute possibilities. So I think we are evolving. As an organization today, I would say 3 years ago, we were nothing, right? Like in this space, like we were just starting, and now we are seeing more traction. And as we continue to grow, um, we have to look at ways of scaling this properly. And hiring somebody on your own staff may not be the only solution, right? Uh,
Mhm.
we are primarily on the East Coast. We do have two field application engineers today. I have one person in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. So this gentleman actually helps out with our agent network, right? So, and he is more of a champion for CMAX in those agencies and helping them design the layouts, create the bill of materials, and then actually even go to the site with them, hold their hands, and walk them through how to commission those
Mhm.
things, right? But that's not a scalable model, right? We got 50 states, and we have really two people basically who are helping me with some of that work. And I have one of our engineering directors working on CMAX. So we're a pretty small team. So I think we've done a respectable job of empowering our agents, and giving them the full knowledge of the system back and forth, right? And truly, giving them deep understanding of how the systems work, and some best practices, so that they are empowered to kind of go and serve the customer's needs. So that's what we've been doing.
Well, and I
But I think,
think
as we add more things, we will have to adapt a little bit, and adapt as
Mhm.
well.
Well, and then I think that that's really heartening to hear. I think, a lot of manufacturers out there kind of say, "Oh, we know all the answers. We know what's going on." And you people who use our stuff just need to be trained. And whereas, you're really actively seeking feedback. You're actively asking and reaching out and making these connections with people,
Mhm.
stakeholders, of the system to make sure that what you're providing is a solution that is actually being asked for. And so I think that's really fantastic because we really do need that dual communication going on. It's not just enough for educational materials to be generated and for people to just learn how to use these newfangled lighting controls, but rather to have that feedback loop of, okay, does this work? What do you need for
Yeah.
support? How can we make this more effective? Because that's really how we make that progress much more capable. And so I'm going to kind of get into our wrap up here because we're running lower on time. But I really think this is just an excellent resource and kind of hits on a lot of the topics that Ron and I keep running up against with most of our guests, which is, you know, lighting controls are complex. There's no way
Yeah.
around that. But there is a way to simplify a lot of the pinch points when it comes to lighting controls. And I think CMAX has really identified several of the pinch points, one of them being just installation alone. By leveraging a well-known and commonly used connector for your triple LC applications, you're providing a much more accessible resource and one that can really address, upgrades or downgrades, even if you want to go that
Yeah.
direction, but just sort of kind of leveraging the ability to just plug and play by connecting and disconnecting using a USB-C connector. That really kind of puts an edge above other groups that are still kind of struggling with, okay, well, what connector do we use? And, well, we picked this connector because that seems to be pretty easy and consistent. But I think there is still education, like you said. You still get those phone calls where it's like, "Can I charge my phone on this?" And it's like, no, 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 that's not the same USB-C. But at the same time, the fact that they're calling you and asking those questions as opposed to just jumping on the assumption train and plugging their phone, and I assume they probably had done that and it just didn't work, and so they're like, wait, this, like, what's going on here? But at the
Right.
very least, you're getting those phone calls, which is great because that means you have open dialogue, you have the communication pathways for them to ask those questions. And as your equipment evolves over time, you're going to adapt to the needs of what people are asking for. So I mean, yeah, you have the triple LC covered, but you also have just the basic NLC network lighting
Yes.
controls platform covered, which really
Exactly.
is fantastic as well. So you're not just preferentially treating your own lighting fixtures through MaxLite, but you're giving other lighting fixtures on the project opportunity to tap into your platform too. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would hope to see that other lighting manufacturers might start adopting the USB-C form factor as well, so that, okay, fine, CMAX has the lighting controls, but it doesn't need to be MaxLite light fixtures that tap into that triple LC capability. And so that way we really have the ability to see more just commonplace for all of this. And additionally, it sounds like, you started off with your network lighting control platform, but then you kind of actually needed to scale it backwards, which a lot of groups don't do. They kind of go, okay, how do we get bigger and more complex with our systems? Whereas you actually started hearing feedback saying, hey, this is still too complex. Can you simplify it? And so you went in the other direction with the basic, which I think is, again, really fantastic because, yeah, okay, most projects, do they need the most whiz-bang experience? Not really. I mean, really,
Right.
they need to meet energy code and maybe get some rebates at the end of the day. So how do you maximize that while still providing some level of controllability?
You maximize it by using MaxLite.
There is Max in there, right? Yeah, you will definitely see we are Max heavy in a lot of the things we do. No, but I think one other point I want to help the audience understand and articulate these 4 tiers, right? So you're absolutely right. We kind of like started here, right? We did network controls. We have advanced controls as well. And you realize the feedback, and now you say, you know what? There is a gap here we didn't bridge. So let's go create EZRF. So we did that, right?
Mhm.
But here is the beauty about the solution. The There is nothing prevents you from having these 3 different or 4 different propositions under one project at any given
Right.
time.
Yeah.
We have done some hospital projects, Webster and Ron, where we had network controls, right, for certain parts of the building. We had basic controls, and now the customer is coming in and saying, actually, I like the EZRF because it is groupable solution, but I don't care for like schedules and everything else. But there is certain
Yeah.
areas in the space I like to add that. Can I do that? I'm like, absolutely. The Lumiere is not complaining. I don't accept EZRF. It will still accept EZRF. So that is the advantage with what we have done as a platform, that we are giving you many tools, and based on your price point, based on your application needs and the features and benefits you're looking for, you don't have to commit to say I have to go network controls 100% for this job site. You can mix and match, right? And that's the a la carte menu, right? We're really offering with controls. um, Not only within the portfolio you have many choices of sensors and other things you want to do, but even within the propositions you can mix and match.
Yeah, no, Umesh, great conversation, really. And like Webster said, everything is about making your system adaptable, right? And regardless of the user's setup today, they could have it the room, the office is set up one way, and then completely rearrange it in a year and just move sensors
Exactly.
around and do some quick reprogramming, and they don't have to move fixtures. They don't have to swap this. So you've really tried to make it easy to use, adaptable, make changes quickly, and you're listening to your customers and taking that feedback and helping develop new product lines rather than just trying to push forward with the big or bad pull back a
Yeah.
little. They need some simpler solutions. So don't lose sight of that as you guys
Yeah, I
continue to
agree.
grow. Don't make
I
sure you
agree.
guys stick with that. Don't lose sight of that customer contact and that feedback. It's so valuable. And
No,
then
thank
right,
you.
you'd already mentioned the education and how much you guys are working on that, and it's great. And just keep pushing forward. You guys are going to do great things.
So one last thing I'll say, this is just a little bit of a joke, right, within the organization. So when we go to Burger King or McDonald's, right, people buy their burgers, and what do they ask you? Like, do you want fries along with it, right? And oftentimes people say yes to that. And we are trying to train our teams also, right? When somebody comes for you for a Luminar job, ask them, do you want controls with it, right? Just like you want fries with your burger. So that's what we are hoping to create this dialogue and at least
Yeah.
educate the audience more.
Awesome, Umesh, fantastic, man. Really appreciate your time today. I will close us out and just remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA. The Wow, I am losing my mind today. This episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and Light Fair. We look forward to seeing you guys back at Light Fair in the spring.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes and a whole lot more, including our certification coming out in 2025. And additionally, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We could not do this without your support. MaxLite and CMax specifically. Check them out. maxlite.com/CMAX. That's where you're going to find out more information if you've really been struck by this episode and want to learn more. But I highly recommend you check it out because there is so much more that we did not get a chance to talk about regarding this platform. It's a really fantastic resource worth checking out if you're unfamiliar with it. Or if you're familiar with MaxLite and you want to learn more about what they're doing in the controls side, like Umesh said, do you want controls with your lights? It's a really great opportunity to tap into that. So thank you for joining us. And Umesh, thank you so much. Really great chatting with you.